Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Directors, New Films, presented by Film at Lincoln Center and the Museum of Modern Arts in New York. I am La Francis Hui. I am the co-chair of this year's festival and also a film curator at MoMA. It is my pleasure to welcome virtually the director of Nasir, Arun Karthick, from Coimbatore. How are you?
Hi, Love Francis. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Nasir is the director's second feature set in Coimbatore, which is where he is from, where he is now, and also in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. A beautifully observed work that follows an ordinary Muslim man over one day. This film exposes the undercurrents of contemporary India, where violence is ready to erupt at any moment. What we see spans only one day, but the vision is enduring and far-reaching. Arun, thanks for joining me, and
Thank you.
congratulations on this wonderful film. Can you begin by telling me about the inspiration for this film? A Clerk Story. It is a short story written by the Tamil writer Dilip Kumar, who shares the same name with the legendary actor. What about this story inspired you, and can you talk about the adaptation process?
Yeah. So I had read the short story a few years before I chose to make the film. But the very first time I read it, I was immediately struck by the character, and I thought that someday probably I would like to make the film. So I went ahead with a few of my other stories and such. But then in the year 2016, there was this riot in my city. It suddenly broke out because a certain right-wing leader was assassinated, and everybody were under the suspicion that the Muslim community probably would be behind this. So a group of mobsters, let's call, so they started breaking down shops in the neighborhood where I was living, and at that time I was running a small shop, and I was seeing for myself that this whole social unrest and this communal tension in front of me, and that is when the short story started coming into my mind. Then I thought that, okay, so here is a sign that is telling me that this is what I should be doing. So because I was one film down and I was thinking, what should I be doing next? I was working on another story, but then this short story kind of surfaced back into my memory, and it kind of obsessed me. So I went back to it and I started reading it. And when I started reading it again with this new perspective of having experienced this social unrest in front of me, that is when I thought, okay, this is a really sensitive story, and it's a fascinating character. And my likeness to the story started with the fact that a lot of us is said about the larger situation of the country, about the society that we are living in, through the telling of one character, or as a relatively a smaller a life, as a life in smaller scale, one person, and you kind of follow this one person, and almost in a macro level magnification, wherein maybe the area is small, but then a lot of details start surfacing. So this was the factor that kind of pulled me into the short story, that it seems like the story of one person, but then it's not just the story of one person. There is lots more to this one person narrative. So I thought, okay, how do I now start to adapt this? And one of the things that I liked about the short story was a lot of the geographical details that was there in the short story was from the places that I had already visited or I was part of. Basically, the city as such, it's my home city. Right from my childhood, we've always visited those bazaars that we see in the film to buy our clothes. And I went to the same school that is shown in the film, where Nasir goes to deliver lunchbox.
Oh,
So even the
wow.
writer of the short story, he studied in the same school. So when I was reading all these geographical pointers, I kind of related immediately. And then after I made the decision that I would adapt the story, that I went to all of these spaces, then I thought that, okay, it's possible for me to kind of make a comment about how life is in these spaces. And I thought that I would only do justice if I actually spend some time and kind of in some way internalize what these lives were about. So I took up a house in that neighborhood, in that Muslim neighborhood. So I'm not actually from the city of Coimbatore. I live 20 kilometers away from the city, near a village. It's my hometown. So, but then I kind of took up a place in this Muslim ghetto for about 2 years. I was living there. I was like observing the everyday and also writing my script and kind of developing the film. So that played a lot of it played a big role in me, uh, in my adaptation process, actually, in shaping up what would be now the film.
You mentioned that you were running a store. What was it? Was it a sari store?
No, no, it was not. No, it was just a very small kiosk that sells coffees and sugarcane juice. But it was for a very brief time. I had just then started the store in the desire of becoming a small-time entrepreneur or something,
Uh,
because my previous film commercially did not do well, and I was thinking, what do I do? So I thought, on the sly, let me just do something. And suddenly this happened, and it was like a sign for me that told me that, okay, I should be, communicating this. I should be telling the story.
you mentioned that you wanted to tell this larger story through the story of one man. So the casting of this person is very important. And in fact, I think all the actors in this film are extremely convincing, and they make a very naturalistic performance. Can you talk about the casting and all these actors?
So I was under the from the very beginning, I was under the impression that the best way to go about this is to actually cast like real people. By real people, I mean people in whose faces that you can already feel the character, or can you already feel what kind of class they are from, and how I mean, they would talk, and not act it out too much. There has to be a sense of naturalism that kind of already permeates into the whole thing. So I thought it would be interesting to find local talents and find talents from actually near that neighborhood and also from other parts. So but every time when I go to producers or go to these markets, try to pitch the film, everybody will be asking me that who's the protagonist, because this is a film that is made or broken by the protagonist. And then I would, for about a year and a half, I did not have my protagonist. And one fine day, through a friend, I kind of chanced upon this particular actor, Koumarane Valavane. He's not actually an actor, he's a theater director. He has his own theater company in Pondicherry. He has an old Pate theater which he's like kind of made as his theater space, and he directs plays. So I went to meet him, and when I saw him, when I spoke to him, his nose and the way his forehead looks, and the way he kind of spoke, and so he's kind of like a happy-go-lucky guy who doesn't think too much of himself, and he's kind of humble in ways that I imagine my character to be. So I immediately thought that this is the person that I should be casting as Nasir. So now I have the protagonist. Then I need a lot of supporting actors. And for all of these supporting actors, I thought I should cast interesting faces, people with interesting characteristics from around the market or from different parts of Tamil Nadu. So we had rehearsals, auditions in Chennai and Coimbatore and Madurai, where we called for people who were all interested in acting in an independent film, and a lot of people turned up. And a lot of people were auditioning, thinking that they were auditioning for an industry film, for a mainstream commercial film and all that. But we had to kind of filter out the faces that we want, and ultimately it worked out well, because almost 90% of the actors that you see in the film acted for the first time. They had never been in front of a camera. So it was an interesting process. I don't also give the script to them before. I just ask them to come a little earlier to the location. Before them, I brief them a little bit about what all of this is about, but then I don't give them the exact dialogue, or I don't exactly tell them what is going to happen. So it's a mix of bringing this new fresh person to the location, kind of explaining him both the spatial coordinates and also the conceptual things like dialogues, and what this is about, what is the background of the story, and then ask them to react to it then. So it's a process of collaboration between the cinematographer, between the actor, the sound person, and me, where on location we try and see, okay, what is today's situation? Okay, this is the location we have, this is the actor that we have, and this is what we need to do, and let's try to make the most out of it. So all of these performances, a lot of it was improvised, and some of it were obviously written and performed as it is in the script. But it was an interesting mix of totally fresh actors and a few people who had acted in some other short films or other films. But largely it was a fresh crew, and I kind of enjoyed working with them, actually.
Wow. Um, Nasir is the main character of the film, but the other crucial character is the city of Coimbatore itself. I mean, you talked about this city, how important it is to your film, and 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 all the details within it. And the city really comes alive in your film, and you have made like very specific technical decisions to capture the flavors of this city. We see the 4:3 screen ratio, which is like boxier and narrower than most films today, not all of them. And I think you use Super 16 to capture the vibrant colors of the city. And I'm also curious about like the frame edges that are curved. Can you talk about all these technical decisions?
So initially, I thought that okay, all of these locations are in the heart of the city, in the middle of the city. But this city is actually a very vibrant city, meaning especially in the business areas of the city where this character works. He works in a cloth shop, and wherever he travels, his own neighborhood, that ghetto, all of it is in that main crux of the city. So it is very important to not be carried away by the functions, by the functioning of the city, because there are so many things that probably one could dwell or show as part of the city, or when the character travels and all of that. But I was under the impression that one must stay with this character, I must follow this character, and as the character kind of explores these spaces, that is how the viewer or the reader must get to know or feel the city, so I didn't try to characterize the city as such. There was a very conscious effort not to characterize the city, but to characterize the character, and thereby feel the city. So how do you feel a city or a space through a character? I thought in our preliminary discussions with my editor, and my late editor Orgo Basu, who's no more, and my cinematographer Somyan Nandasahi, we were generally under the impression that for this story, probably less is more. We don't have to show everything vis-a-vis the spaces, vis-a-vis other characters. We don't have to like kind of show everything, in the sense that even the way we frame, uh, the way the dialogues are, kind of articulated, and all of these, you don't have to expose everything. So we thought, let us minimize our information, so that whatever is necessary kind of gets through. So when you want to minimize visual information, it's not just the number of shots, it's also how your frame is, or what are the things that you want to include in your frame. So my initial impulse was to see this space in a boxed way, because all of the houses that you see near the ghetto, and even the textile shops and in the bazaars, everything is cramped for space, because this is a kind of a busy city, and space is a very important factor, and not everybody can afford to live in like huge spaces. Especially this particular lower middle class community always lived in cramped spaces, and choosing a very wide frame or a larger frame would unnecessarily involve or include things that we probably don't want to include. So I thought that okay, in a more narrower, in a more reduced space or a frame would probably work better, because you need to see things through Nasir or with Nasir. So we thought that the 4:3 frame is the most economical, because it kind of reduces the information that you could actually see in the frame, and we could probably give the most essential information in this small frame. And once we made this decision and started dwelling more on it, the sound designer of a film, Gautam Nair, he chipped in and he said, okay, if you're doing this to the frame, to the visual information, what about the oral information? And that is when we started thinking, okay, what happens to the sound of the film? Because sound is 360 degrees and it's omnidirectional in certain ways, but visual is sometimes two-dimensional. You just see a flat surface. So sound can actually come from different coordinates. So how do we reduce the sound information? Because we are going to stick with one character, and we also want to hear sounds around this character, and not all kinds of sounds from different parts of the busy city. So that is when the suggestion came up that let us try and design this film in mono. So we designed the film in a mono format, where there is just one primary soundtrack and every sound effect is mixed onto this one layer. So we thought this 4:3 image with just sound coming from a single center speaker would actually kind of converge the viewer's attention into the image more, thereby concentrating the viewer's focus on the character more. So these kind of creative or cinematic decisions kind of worked well for us, because these decisions were not made for any, I don't know, for any fancy reasons or to prove a point. We had a kind of concept, and we wanted to tell our story through these ideas that we believed could work for the film. And I'm kind of glad that a lot of people mention about the frame size and also even the vignetting, because when we were grading, I had the idea that, which my cinematographer also supported a lot, that this film, even in the NR usage of colors, and you mentioned 16 mm. So initially we wanted to shoot this film on Super 16 film because of the when the space is a very colorful space. This guy works in a textile shop. The city has a lot of colors. So I wanted a good color representation. At the same time, we wanted this 4:3 this thing, and I also wanted a bit of grain and all of that. And that is when we thought Super 16 could be interesting. But then going to shoot in film would be a backward process for me today, because with my budget, I won't be able to shoot whatever I want, and it would impose a lot of restrictions, which was uncalled for, which was not, I thought it's not necessary to delve into those restrictions. So what would be the best way? And I chanced upon this amazing camera called Digital Bolex. It was made in LA by a group of American innovators, cinematographers. So it was a limited edition camera, and this camera had a Super 16 sensor, and it would capture images very close to what film, Super 16 film would probably do, because they had replicated the values of the film stock, and they had calibrated the sensor in a way that this sensor would give you very film-like images. So I thought, okay, that is one way of getting away from this realistic sense, because this film is set in a very dry, realistic space where there is a lot of real time. Every shot is composed of real time events and activities. So I thought the only way to kind of construct the world of the character is by enhancing something, which would not look very real. The colors, the texture, the grain, and even the sound, all of it has to have a slight misalignment from what we are generally used to seeing as reality. Let's say like other cameras and other ways of showing would probably make this story seem more real. But I wanted it to look a little more like a tale, the telling of it, that I'm actually telling a story. It's not reality that you're watching. It's a retold tale. So for this telling and kind of a told story feeling to emerge, we thought this vignetting and this aspect ratio and this really saturated enhanced color and grain could help, because it doesn't give you the feeling that it is actually real. It is real, but at the same time it has this little misalignment from reality. So we wanted to use this for our cinematic value.
That's wonderful. You mentioned sound, and sound is very important in the film. The soundscape is very interesting and very rich. We do hear a lot of like public announcements from speakers, and we also hear street noises. And I just love the music and the singing, and of course, like you have the narration or the recitation of poetry. Can you talk about the overall design of the soundscape?
So the idea was to always stay with the character and to try and bring out sounds that would matter to the narrative more, not sounds that would aesthetically or geographically give us more details. That were always to us supporting aspects. Because if we were to actually go with the geographical feeling or the realistic feeling of sounds, we would probably go on for a 5.1 atmosphere where you could still direct the spatial coordinates better. But what happens in a mono design is that you actually put tracks that is absolutely essential for the story or for the image. And for us, the essential things were, sometimes when the character is doing an activity, it would be a very close Foley sound of what he's doing. And when he's walking to the streets, rather than hearing sounds which which were not part of his world or which were other noises, we wanted to hear sounds which would matter to the narrative, which would matter to the world of Nasir. For instance, wanting to hear this loudspeakers, because that is an information that I could not have told otherwise. Because if I were to shoot people, talking through stages in meetings and all of that, that would be away from the character's journey. Because I had decided, and also in the short story, there was this inherent form that we would just follow the character. And once you're following the character, you should also kind of use sound that this character hears. So all the sound that spills over near him, from south loudspeakers or from other nearby houses, those are the sounds that we are going to use. So and also this is also some decisions were made in the post production, like how to use these sounds of the loudspeaker and how to use these songs and the poetry, and all of this were not exactly like this in the script. In the script we had these ideas, but then we had to play with them during the post production. That I felt that sometimes you need uh, uh, some kind of a catalyst. I thought the information that is being transmitted through the loudspeakers is very integral to the film, because that also represents a certain reality, a certain social reality, that during the film actually happens on a festival day, or during the festival atmosphere of Ganesh Chaturthi. So during those times, and also in other times, there are always these loudspeaker wars. The Hindu right wing organization has their own meetings, and they talk all their propaganda through the loudspeakers. And also during the sermons in the mosque, these people also talk things. So we had recorded this. Actually, these are all real recordings from the space. We had recorded it, and during the post production I thought, okay, why not juxtapose these sounds when Nasir and his wife are walking, because that was an idea that during shooting there was actually one sermon going on, the Muslim sermon. Then we thought, okay, let's contrast it when they walk through a Hindu neighborhood. Let us actually have those sermons, and it kind of brought a bit of context to the narrative, that actually these people live in spaces where this kind of information or this kind of propaganda or these kind of uh, intolerant activities are going on. So that was interesting. And secondly, to do with the music of the film, I had always thought that this film probably does not require a background score as such, because since in all of these spaces there is a real-time, lively, candid uh, performance of actors going on. You don't really need a background score to enhance things. You just need all those real gestures and real dialogues and live sound to kind of keep you there. And sometimes you need music as, as a what to say, in a narrative way. For example, the character actually likes to listen to some music in the morning when he's working. He puts on his tape recorder when he's working, and it's an everyday thing. And also when he comes back to his home to have his lunch, he likes to take a nap and also likes to play his favorite music, which is a ghazal song, and it's from a North Indian singer. And since he's Muslim and he understands Hindi, and there are a lot of non-Muslim people also who likes to hear Hindi songs, and these were elements which were there in the short story, that the writer Dilip Kumar had already characterized this character as a person who likes to listen to old film songs from other languages also. So I took up these details from the short story, and I kind of chose a track with the help of my cinematographer that would bring out the internal the romanticness of this character, because he's whatever said and done, he's a romantic guy and he's a very optimistic guy in life actually. So these musics I thought kind of enhanced that and kind of told that. Otherwise I didn't want to use music just to, I don't know, join scenes or to just you know yeah.
Um, this is not really like a happy film, but I have to admit that I was smiling when I was watching the film. It is really pleasurable to watch it. I love all the details. I like every single shot. There are a lot of very interesting close-ups. For example, you have the fingers, you have like a fly on the hand, you have the plant, and you have some splashes and drawings on the wall. The film is kind of like stitched together by a lot of these interestingly composed single takes, and a lot of them are static. There is an internal poetic rhythm that mirrors the poetic nature of the main character. Can you talk about the overall composition and the sense of pace?
Yeah. So the sense of pace had to be in accordance with the sense of the day. So we were always thinking about how do you make it feel like an everyday situation, because we didn't want to approach the film with the perspective that this is going to be this character's last day, because you could shoot it like his last day, and that could be little different, because then your shooting choices, your creative choices could be different. And and also at the same time, this is not just another day, so it is in a sense an attempt to try and bring the past, present, and future all in one single plane. And how do you do that? It is by delving into the inner world of the person. Deleuze calls it as the crystal image, where there is a sense of the past, there is a sense of the present, and also what is to come, how this character's future life would be. And in a way that in terms of creating your imagery, you can bring in the sense of this different kinds of time zones. And how do you do that? It is actually by going between, dynamically shifting between the physical external world and the inner world of the character. And the inner world of the character is often psychological. How do you actually represent what a person is thinking? So that's always a question that I have. That, of course, it's not easy. Nothing is easy in cinema, but it's rather rather more simpler to kind of put the camera in front of a person and make him say something which will represent what he feels. But at the same time, if you take away the dialogue, or if you want to not say it through words, if you want to kind of stretch imagery into the mind of the reader and also to represent the mind of the character, then the focal length becomes a key factor. And it's always fascinating to me how close-ups work in cinema. And close-ups are always relative. It is whatever was your previous shot, your next shot could be closer, and meaning that, for me, in a way, that the beauty of cinema also lies in how you can shift between the farthest of things and how you can go to the most macro and the minutest of things and still be able to say a lot. Even in a very long shot or a wide shot, there are a lot of details to be learnt. And also in a very tight close-up of just a hand, just you see various marks on a hand or lines on your palm, or probably a fly on this thing, and how the way light falls on it. It can actually say certain things. It can trigger some kind of internal psychological feelings. And I always believe that this dynamic shift between the actual outside and this actual inside that one is trying to articulate through images, this is where the cinematic play is there. So, I mean, close-ups are a beautiful thing in cinema. I mean, and I think cinema is also about looking at things closely, close. And what is close is always up to the creator to decide, to him, what is relatively close. But I think this mix of focal length and sound and light from different points of views, in terms of distance and perspective, I think that adds a lot to the telling of a story or of a feeling or an emotion.
Okay, I'm dying to know what this thing is. Like, you have these tropical fish kind of like moving across the screen. It looks like a light show. What the hell is that?
So it's an interesting. So this is what I love about making films this way. That I had written a certain scene where this particular character, Iqbal, who's physically challenged, he's differently abled. He comes to his caretaker Nasir, his cousin, and they have an actual talking sequence in the original short story. This guy talks. He's drawing, and he's unable to. I mean, he's drawing in his own way, let's say. And when this guy asks what he's doing, they have a conversation. Okay. So then, when I was casting, I made sure that I don't want uh, uh, a person who's not physically challenged to act like as if he's physically challenged or he's differently able. So we went to different homes and actually cast a person who's actually physically differently abled and all that. So once we cast him and he came to the location, I found out that it's impossible for this person to remember all these dialogue and to have an actual conversation. So now from my script, the conversation scene is out. But then I want that scene because it's very important that this guy is drawing his fish. And when Nasir comes back to have lunch, he has some kind of connection with this boy. He kind of thinks that, okay, this is the inner world of the boy. The boy is kind of obsessed with his fishes, and all of this sense has to be there in the film. I cannot now chuck it away from the film. How do we do it? And then with my cinematographer and with my production designer, Mausam, we kind of found a way. She went to all these old markets and she was picking a lot of old objects that we could use in the film. That is when she's found this aquarium. Okay. And she brought it. And once I saw, and me and my cinematographer thought, okay, this is the fish that we were unable to shoot. Instead of just having the conversation, let's use this fish as a background and kind of evoke this imagery, evoke this sense that, okay, this is the inner world of the character. This boy is in his dreams or is in reality is occupied with the fishes that he's drawing He's occupied with the fishes in his toy, So how do you tell it? If I'm not able to do a dialogue sequence, let me try and create a sense of motion with the images, and with this object, try and create a relationship between this boy and this toy, or this toy that belongs to his world. So we put it in his background, shot the fishes going behind his head, and we did all of that with the music to give the sense that, okay, this is where this boy belongs. He belongs into this world of fishes.
It looks very Wong Kar-wai when that happens. It's brilliant. There has been a rise of division and religious conflicts in India nationwide, not just in your region. We know that India is a very diverse country with different religions, different languages. You even have like individual thriving regional film industries. Um, there's this really interesting scene in the sari shop. Nasir, a Muslim man, he has just arrived at work and he goes to put the garland on the statue of Krishna, who is a Hindu deity. And behind him, we see Jesus and Ganesh on the wall. There is a sense of harmony that is both natural and superficial. Can you talk about that?
So it is a relatively common phenomenon in a lot of shops, whether they do believe in such kind of religious harmony or not. It is, at least, I mean, sometimes it is just to showcase their point of view, or sometimes it is real, that people actually have this statue where there are three gods. Okay, sometimes it's like a statement, okay, I believe in everything or something, but it is a very common thing that for people, even in a lot of our houses, in shops, we have this a single array of gods, where you have the Christian god, the Muslim god, and the Hindu god all in one, this thing. So and actually in the actual shop that I had rented to shoot the film, they had such an image. So I thought, why not? I mean, if this is the reality, if whoever the shopkeeper might be, this, that, or whatever, but he has such an image, so, and when Nasir, and a lot of people like Nasir or such workers, it is a part of their everyday job. It is to clean the shop. There might be different things in the shop, for all the matter, there could be a Jesus statue and the owner could be a Christian, and still you would be expected to do your duty, which is to get the shop ready for business. So Nasir understands this. He's a practical man. He understands that he doesn't think of himself as a very pious Muslim man, and I would only touch Muslim iconography. I would not touch a Jesus statue or a Krishna statue. No, that is not Nasir. Nasir is a person who thinks smartly. He thinks that, even my own colleague or my fellow co-worker could be a right-wing person. He could be a different person, but I cannot go on fighting with him because I need to work today. I need the job for tomorrow. I need to get along with these people. Even though I might have my own ideology, it is not important to kind of always fight and kind of prove who you are or what you stand for. And also in a certain way, Nasir is a guy who believes, let's say, in peace and in harmony. So he's okay cleaning that. For him, it's just a symbol of love or unity. Every god at the core of it that is what it means. It tries to tell you that life is all about love and cooperation and trying to. So he's a character who kind of understands this, maybe because he's a poet, maybe because he loves his wife, or maybe something in him tells him that life is about actually coexisting with people. It's not about trying to say that what you think is the only thing that matters. So for Nasir to do such kind of cleaning on a statue that is not from his religion is not actually a big deal. He thinks that is part of his job. He's supposed to do it, and he's okay with it.
But do you think that there is a per se pervasive normalization of intolerance and hostility? I mean, Muslims and Hindus can work together in the same shop, but one colleague could say hateful things about Muslims on the phone in front of Nasir. Everyone seems to just accept the underlying hate, like it's simply background noise.
So I react to it in a very practical and realistic way than an ideological way, because of course, I mean, I always had the choice that Nasir would actually immediately react to what he's hearing from his colleague, but that is not how in most cases reality works. Not every Muslim is an activist or he fights for his right. There are a few people who take it up to the other person, who make the other person fight with them and understand that this is not what you are saying is untrue, and all that and all that. But Nasir understands that if he does that, he could lose his job, and right from his childhood, and he's always been hearing such things around him. And if you come, and this is exactly why I spent 2.5 years in that space, like how do these people in this particular area, when the whole city or most part of the city is filled with people from different communities, largely from the Hindu community, a certain Muslim community is able to sustain itself and give a tough competition in terms of business, in terms of a lot of things to the other community. How do you think they exist there? It is not by on an everyday basis picking fights with the other person, because of course the Hindu person are picking on them, they are saying things that might hurt them, and in both ways. But these people smartly have found ways to not just react to these things because they think they are above it. They don't ideologically believe in these things. Okay, let him say what he wishes, but I know that is not true, and I know he is an ignorant guy, and I don't have to kind of justify or prove to him that he is ignorant and all that. So what I'm trying to say is a lot of people have accepted this reality as a part of life, that if you are a minority, the other person would actually be saying things. And one of the ways of handling it is by just getting ahead with your work and not by immediately confronting.
Are people in India watching this film, and then how have they received it?
Most of them actually like it, whoever have seen him. Some of them has actually brought up this question of exactly this: why did I not politicize his character? Because Nasir could have also been this political Muslim who immediately reacts to everything that is happening around him, and he's a Muslim with a certain ideology of his own and all that. Why did I not make a character like that? But then I thought, so that is not the film that I want to make, probably because I don't identify myself from any religion, because I don't, I believe in things in life, but not in gods or in any religion. So maybe if a Muslim person were to make a film, he would have politicized this character more. But in my perspective, I wanted to look at uh, a very what say an ordinary human. By ordinary human, I mean, of course, everybody is a little extraordinary in their own detailed, close way. But then by ordinary people, I mean the majority of the minority are not the people who go on the streets to fight. They are people who chew all these things up, who kind of internalize these things and find their own ways to vent it out. They are not the people who's going out and protesting on the streets. So to create a Muslim character is not to always create a political Muslim. Because of course, by virtue of existing as a Muslim, there is already some politics at stake at every point that you'll encounter. But you don't have to overdo it by actually, because that is not how people are, or in society that is not. Because my understanding of spending time there clearly taught me all of these people working in the markets, all of these people working as subordinates under other people, they are not always fighting. Maybe internally they are bad mouthing them, or in their mind they're thinking like, what the fuck is this guy saying? He's saying something that is hurtful to me or is wrong to me, but they don't actually confront those people. And so to some of those extreme views that I should have probably created a political Muslim character and all, that is a different film to be made out of this. That is not the film that I want to say. This is exactly the film that I wanted to make, because having read the short story, I really connected with this person. Even though he might be from certain community, I saw a part of me in himself, of a middle class person who feels at times powerless, and also who likes to take resort in his own internal worlds and his own fantasies, and in his own romantic self. So for me, Nasir was a person who kind of would represent the majority within the minority.
Hmm. Well, I certainly hope that many people in India will watch this film and it can open up some discussions. Um, Thank you so
It
much for
has already. A lot of people have already discussed at length about this, but yeah, India is a very large country with so many people, and definitely lots more people uh, are yet to watch the film, and we would love to have discussions on this, because this is seeming like a never-ending topic with the right-wing government in power, and with
it's
more measures taken to kind of fuel this intolerance. We should actually talk more about the position of a minority, and I am certainly not of the opinion that uh, that I have actually said something new or something. I just tried to reflect in my own perspective what I saw, and also what I read, and what I feel towards this whole thing. And and I think more than this political statement in the film, it is, for me, what is interesting is the life of a person, the inner workings of how uh, uh, how the day functions, and how you're trapped within this materialistic, life of desires, of disappointments, and sometimes tragedy which is uncalled for, which can be a direct result of something that you were never a part of,
Yeah, it's more
which
about
was which was the more tragic. The tragic violence in the film is what interested me to the whole story, because it is a tragedy. It is more violent because there was no there was no clue as to what would happen to him. He was just on his walk, and how could you kind of unplug a person without any warning from his life, for just his identity, and this for me was the most striking aspect, and I just wanted to communicate this. So,
well, you've done a great job, and I hope that it's going to be shown to more people. This is a very strange year. I wish that you had come to New York. I would have
I
loved to
really
meet
wish that
you,
as well.
and I wish you the best. And I hope that to stay in touch about your next film, and I will meet in New York someday or somewhere
I
in
really
the
hope
world.
that.
Okay.
Yes, La Francis. Thank you so much. Thanks to the new directors, new films team, Sophia, Dennis, La Francis, all of you guys, Olivia, for having a film and somehow going ahead with the festival. That is really happy news for us. Thank you so much. And I really wish the best for all of you, and hope the festival goes well. Hope to see
Thank
you guys sometime. Yeah.
Thank you. You take care.
Take care. Take care, La Francis.
Bye
Yes. Thank you.
bye.